basically to enhance our lives as women or coaches of women. So I'll do a little background on myself. Those that don't know me, Caroline DeMesquita, I grew up on a farm in Northwest Ohio. So my background was all in food production, agriculture, understanding it at a grassroots level. That was the first time I stepped on stage. I did a 18-week prep, and right off the bat, in a caloric surplus, I lost my period. Now, I'd always had menstrual issues growing up. I would have short periods. I'd have really heavy bleeding. I'd have really painful periods. And I just was always told it was normal. Go to gynecologists. They'd say, well, you want to be put on birth control. And I would say, no, thank you. Carry on. Because something just didn't seem right. And so that's when I really started to dive into women's health and learn more about nutrition, macronutrients, mindfulness, stress management. All are told that our improvement season, you need to put on weight and you need to have extra body fat to put on muscle, be in a bulk mode, if you will, which is what a lot of the bro bodybuilders call it. The problem with that is we see a lot of women that either go to one extreme and stay dieting year round, or go to the other extreme, don't heal, and have issues like I had, where essentially I got a Dutch test done and I had no hormones. I was going through metabolic dysfunction since coming out of my show in September of 2020 up through this past July. And the reason I know that is because of my blood work that I had done in December of 2020. I had some done in March 2021, had some done in July, and I just recently got my blood work back again. So needless to say, I'm really passionate about this topic because not only have I gone from natural to enhanced, but I also see all the layers that go into feminine health and what we need to do and can do better as an industry to help other women out there. So today, an overview on everything we'll be discussing. I just want to remind y'all that I am not a doctor, and this presentation is specifically for the education and entertainment purposes. Well, most doctors don't know how to manage the ebbs and flows of the female hormonal cycle, aka our menstrual cycle that happens on average every 28 to 35 days. And they consider us too inconsistent to be used in clinical studies and research. And this was as of the Journal of Sports History, volume 14. So when we're thinking about how women aren't being included in the studies, but we are getting recommendations from doctors, physicians on our health, there's kind of a gap there. Essentially, that puberty for males is marking the onset of strength and enhancing their vigor. But for females, it's marking the prolonged periodic weakness of womanhood. They're pulling that directly, that young women who are playing sports, especially during their menstrual cycles, they studied how these young women would begin the intensive physical sport prior to menarche, especially if they were dancers, skiers, gymnasts, cross country, swimming, distance runners, all the sports that are very intensive on the body, that they were starting to experience amenorrhea or infertility. And so that is why they were claiming that women aren't able to perform the same way as men, and we are damaging ourselves for the sake of performance. But is that really true? Are we really just damaging ourselves, or we aren't understanding how to really regulate the female body because they aren't including us in the research? We're looking at our gut health, oral health, adrenals, pituitary, and neurotransmitters. And the reason I'm going over this right now is because before we consider enhancement, these are all pieces of the puzzle for our hormones and a female's overall health. So this slide in general is a lot to look at, but we need to understand how hormones are broken down. They all start at the cholesterol level. And I want to note this now because as we go into the layers of why certain substances respond in the body in certain ways, as well as the potential short-term, long-term side effects, we need to understand that they're coming from the cholesterol molecule. Things. Because if you're not, we need to make sure that that is optimized before you consider any type of performance enhancement, male or female. Because if not, we're going to be backtracking to those health issues we talked about in the beginning of the presentation. I don't know how I came up with this analogy with the souffle, but I was having a conversation with someone one day. I was like, people need to stop trying to cook a souffle in an Instant Pot, because that's what they're trying to do with PEDs. People are trying to rush the process. They're trying to just throw everything in a pot and bam, make their dream body happen. But that's the problem, is when we do that, we are going to get ourselves into a sticky situation, too much stacked on at once, too fast without a plan of going into the cycle, coming out of the cycle, or starting another cycle too early without even reviewing labs. I hear horror stories almost every day. And oftentimes when we're looking at PEDs, it can take 2 weeks to see an external difference, depending on the substance. And some you can feel within a day of use, depending on how intuitive you are with your body. But the dosage is going to vary and the product is going to vary per person. So we need to know and recognize that they aren't meant to be a shortcut. If you're going to use something, you need to understand the risks involved. You need to understand what the long-term, short-term positives and negatives can be, but also recognize that one person's poison is another person's pleasure. Just like with food, some people can enjoy one thing, and another person, it literally breaks them break out. So we just need to be smart about it. And that's where looking at some of these details of your health, and we'll be going into more specifics in a little bit on labs, health history, to really analyze what might be best options for certain people. So this is a long list, which is why I just included the whole thing. Some of them are short-term, some of them are long-term. One thing I want to notate is kidney issues. There is no correlation between using PEDs and getting kidney issues, unless that person has a genetic displacement with their kidneys. So to say that someone cannot get any side effects, if they don't get it right away, there can still be side effects. We just don't know it. Now, one thing to notate for blood work and using some SARMs, if the female is naturally lower androgen on her panel, so maybe she's a higher estrogen, lower androgens, you can use SARMs, but you need to watch her vitamin D and her lipids. And that's a problem that we run into all the time, is regular doctors only have their list of things they need to track. And we have things that we know are going to be important for our health. I want to thank everyone again for participating. I did include all of my sources, and I know there's more I forgot to include here, but in general, a lot of it has been experience, word of mouth, online research, and as you guys know, there's a lot of gray area out there, and that's where I'm trying to help make it a little bit more black and white, because as we're hearing female bodybuilders pass away that shouldn't have passed away, that are in their 20s and 30s, like these things are taboo and should not be happening. So it made it even more urgent for me to put this course together, to get it out there into the world and try to help educate and get the voice out there so we can help prevent more women's health issues.